This series is sponsored by War Thunder. Empress Eugenie's Matador Arena, Victoria's Diplomatic Dinner, and the Sevastopol Stormer. These are just some of the attractions you'll find in Napoleon III's Carnival Empire. Get your poster 10% off via the links in the description. Spain is being run into the ground by the worst dictator on the face of Europe, and I'm sick of pretending it's not. I'm not a dictator. Not only is Narvaez a fat, ugly little man, and not only do his soldiers butcher good Spanish citizens in the streets of our capital, he's responsible for Eugenie! You are a woman in the 19th century. People hundreds of years from now will assume the problem here is that you're sharing your political opinions. But that's actually pretty normal for most of history. What isn't acceptable at any time is you doing it at a dinner party. And one where the dictator of Spain you're criticizing sits right across from you. I'm not a dictator. This is none of your business. Women aren't the ones doing the fighting. It's not like you have the courage to face down bayonets. Bayonets? Yeah, and I am not a... Wait, what? Oh, Dios mío! I am not a dictator! And they say the perfect woman doesn't exist. Listen, fellas, all I'm saying is, what other people call crimson red flags, I call wife material. And Emperor Napoleon III agrees with me. Before they exchange vows, let's learn a little more about our French Empress-to-be. But first, I cannot thank War Thunder enough for sponsoring this whole series, but you can help by signing up to play for free via the links in the description and pinned comment. New and returning players on PC and console who haven't played for the last 6 months also get a free bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive Eagle of Valor decorator, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account. Thank you, War Thunder, for making in-depth history like this free for everyone. Eugenie de Montijo was born in the middle of an earthquake in Granada, Spain on May 5th, 1826. Raised in a powerful, politically active family, it was only natural she would develop a taste for politics. And as we've just seen, she had no fear expressing her opinions in any of the English, French, or Spanish languages. This Countess of Montijo was a bundle of contradictions. On the one hand, a 19th century tomboy, known to dress like a man for her passions of bullfighting, horses, and hunting. But on formal occasions, never afraid to show off and dress to the nines. An outspoken feminist, but also staunch Catholic and reactionary, which means Eugenie believed women should have rights, except for the right to vote, because the boys don't get that one either. Following the loss of a suitor to her older sister, the ever-impulsive Eugenie almost succumbed to a homemade poison. The incident prompted her mother to find Eugenie a husband too. But her younger daughter was also so picky that she rejected every eligible bachelor in Spain. The search turned abroad, until it honed in on one of the most eligible bachelors in Europe, France's newly elected president, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte. In March of 1849, Prince President Louis Napoleon invited 23-year-old Eugenie de Montijo and her mother to a private dinner. But when it became clear the Prince President's real intentions were to skip the nuptials and get right onto the conjugals, mother and daughter made their excuses and beat a hasty retreat back to Spain. Following Louis Napoleon's ascension in 1852, the Bachelor Emperor took his search for an empress more seriously. All the first families of Europe quickly snubbed the Bonaparte upstart. So as the search turned to Europe's second families, Eugenie and her mother returned to Paris in the autumn of 1852. The French emperor clearly hadn't forgotten this Spanish beauty, who delivered him a rare rejection. The whole court knew he was smitten when at a hunting party, Louis Napoleon rode up to congratulate Eugenie personally for her excellent horsemanship bringing her first to the kill. But nearly all of Louis Napoleon's advisors and relatives were against the match. Most tried to sabotage it. Only Morny pointed out that Eugenie was well qualified for the job of French empress, and that she descended from one of the oldest and most illustrious families in Europe, a real boon to a Bonaparte dynasty only 5 decades old. Though he took Morny's advice and decided to marry Eugenie, the phlegmatic emperor took his sweet time proposing to her. As they waited, Eugenie and her mother, the latter of whom developed a rather loose reputation at court, suffered the abuses of a hostile Bonaparte clan. Only after threatening to leave France did the emperor formally propose. Which Eugenie accepted, of course. Do you know why? Fellas, let me explain. If you want to get the Spanish tomboy princess or prince of your dreams, you're going to have to improve yourself. That means getting an education, a good paying job, working on your personality, and most important of all, making sure you're subscribed to the CallMeEzekiel YouTube channel. You don't want to be an unsubbed viewer, do you? Just look at them. Uneducated, unemployed, no ambition to speak of. Disgusting. So consider this your warning, unsubscribed viewers. Click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell right now, or you'll never land the date of your dreams. After the betrothal, Napoleon III made the uncharacteristically impulsive decision to hold the imperial wedding just 2 weeks after their engagement. As the capital was thrown into a frenzy to meet the deadline, Pope Pius IX declined to officiate the marriage. Remarkably ungrateful for the man whose throne Napoleon III spilt blood to rescue. Despite the challenges, the wedding was as magnificent as an imperial ceremony should be, marred only by most of the Bonaparte clan refusing to bow to their new empress. The once independent-minded Eugenie quickly adapted to her new role. When the impoverished city of Paris tried buying her an extravagant diamond necklace, Eugenie declined it and gave the money to charity. She did the same with a gift of 250,000 francs from her new husband. For her wedding present, Eugenie asked Napoleon to pardon the political prisoners he was still keeping since the coup of 1851. 4,312 men were released, and the French had their empress. The France Napoleon III had taken charge of practically belonged to the last century. Dear Uncle Bonaparte left behind a ruined nation, which neither the Bourbons nor Orleans did much to develop. France was behind in everything, from finance to industry to infrastructure. France only had a quarter as much railroad as could be found on the much smaller island of Great Britain. To make France great again, Napoleon III would have to completely transform its socio-economic order, beginning with the admittedly unexciting financial sector. Whereas once only private banks and wealthy investors could build industrial projects, the emperor unlocked mountains of new capital through financial institutions that accepted deposits from private individuals. The ministries of agriculture, commerce, and public works were merged to support them, and the resultant economic boom attracted billions of francs in foreign capital. The private sector was not alone. Inspired by the early utopian socialist Saint-Simon, Napoleon III ran a mixed economy, with the government budgeting tens of millions of francs a year for public works, the alleviation of poverty, and infrastructure. Some of the largest budget increases went to the military. In 1852, the Navy alone was granted 32 million francs for modernization and expansion. But the French emperor believed in more than just finance and industry. He sponsored France's academics, artists, inventors, and scientists. Perhaps Napoleon III's greatest project was the complete revitalization of Paris. When he came to power, France's capital city was far from the resplendent city of lights we think of today. Really, it was the opposite, an overbuilt medieval slum. The city practically had no clean water or sanitation. Modern jokes about French people smelling like sewage were literally true in 1850. This program would not be funded by taxes, but by selling bonds to an enthusiastic public. Napoleon III tapped one George Haussmann to lead the revitalization. He was quite possibly the only man in France up to the challenge. Granted near dictatorial powers, Haussmann began the destruction of Old Paris in 1854. Thousands of Parisian poor were driven out of their homes to clear the slums and widen the streets, a key measure designed to prevent insurgents from constructing those barricades they were so fond of. Naturally, this made Haussmann extremely unpopular. But, both ruthless and incorruptible, nothing would stop him from building the most spectacular city in Europe. Louis Napoleon had once assured the French people that the empire means peace. But any successor to his uncle's empire would have to achieve some military victories, at least for the army's sake. 450,000 soldiers made it the third largest in Europe, and certainly its most powerful. The first major war of Napoleon III's reign had its origin in the Ottoman Empire. To secure the support of French Catholics, the emperor pressured the Sultan to declare him the protector of Christians in the Ottoman Empire. But that meant taking the title from Russia, which naturally upset them. What followed was a remarkable series of escalations that involved every great power in Europe. Hi there, Mr. Sultan. Can I be the new protector of Christians in your empire? Yeah, sure. Whatever. What? You can't do that. That title belongs to me. And it's yours again. Why, you little, I'm sending a boat into the Black Sea. Well, I'm invading Ottoman Wallachia and Moldavia. What? Britain, help! You'd better watch it, Russia. You guys can't fight a war on my border. I'm calling a conference.
One international peace conference later.
With this Vienna note, I think we have a fair settlement. What do you think, Russia? It looks good to me. Good job, everyone. It sounds like peace for our time. I reject it. What? I think the Vienna note is too broad. Also, I declare war. Well, I'm destroying your entire fleet at Sinope. Ha! Now I control the Black Sea. That makes me the most powerful country in Europe. Wait, the most powerful country in Europe? Oh no!
Темная ночь, только пули.
There he is! Get him! On March 27th, 1854, France and Great Britain declared war on Russia. For the first time since Napoleon I, the great powers of Europe were at war. And, for the first time in over a century, England and France were on the same side of it. Though the Crimean War was largely an accident, turning France into a British ally was a tremendous victory for Napoleon III. News of British and French troops fighting side by side caused the emperor's popularity to skyrocket in England. It also created the opportunity to achieve one of Louis Napoleon's greatest ambitions, a state visit between his family and Queen Victoria. Persigny, then French ambassador to England, tested the waters in September by arranging a meeting between Prince Consort Albert and Napoleon. When the two German-accented gentlemen got along well, planning for an official state visit began. But Queen Victoria was still skeptical. She dragged her feet until spring of 1855, when Napoleon announced he would go to the Crimea to take personal charge of the war. This horrified the British, who feared the inexperienced Louis Napoleon might lead the Allied armies to disaster. Or, even worse, victory. To prevent that from happening, they agreed to the state visit on April 16, 1855. The encounter was very nearly a disaster for the imperial couple. Victoria was unimpressed at their first meeting. In her diary, she described Napoleon III as short, with a head and bust that belonged to a much larger man. Their first dinner was almost even worse. The imperial baggage train was held up by fog, leaving Eugenie without an appropriate outfit. The Empress had to improvise one out of a borrowed dress and pink flower wreath taken from a vase in her room. But at dinner, the English queen was impressed by Eugenie's ingenuity and modesty. and by how the Empress genuinely admired the morality of the English court. Louis Napoleon charmed the Queen over their conversation. By the end of dinner, the English royals were thoroughly won over. In fact, they all got along so well that Victoria awarded the French Emperor the Order of the Garter, perhaps England's oldest, and certainly most prestigious, chivalric order. When the Bonapartes left a few days later, Victoria wrote, "I cannot say why, but their departure made me so melancholy." A reciprocal state visit by Victoria and Albert to France took place 4 months later. While Napoleon and Eugenie were as agreeable as ever, the rest of the Bonaparte clan was far less charming. Napoleon's corpulent cousin Planplan, technically heir to the throne until Napoleon had a son of his own, being a particular nuisance. The English royals toured the renewed Paris, where Haussmann named Avenue Victoria after the Queen. They also attended the 1855 Universal Exhibition, showcasing the Second Empire's achievements. They even visited the grave of Napoleon I, whose defeat to Russia in 1812 they were both about to avenge. As the English and French ruling families feted one another, the Crimean War had devolved into a brutal stalemate. Casualties mounted from disease, summer heat, poor generalship, and misuse of modern technology. Cousin Planplan abandoned his division early in the conflict and fled back to France. In March 1855, Russia's Tsar Nicholas I died, giving way to Alexander II. And in May, soldiers from the Italian kingdom of Sardinia-Piedmont arrived to join the fight. After capturing the key city of Sebastopol, the British wanted to push deeper into Russia, but the French emperor had enough of this expensive and increasingly unpopular war. He did not want to totally crush Russia the way England did. At the Paris peace talks, which opened in February 1856, the French emperor had to moderate the most punitive English demands. The Treaty of Paris, signed in March, forced the Russians to demilitarize the Black Sea, returned the Romanian principalities to the Ottoman Empire, though they actually ended up independent, ceded Bessarabia to Moldova, and brought the Turks into the concert of Europe. Those holy sites, which supposedly caused the conflict, were placed under the Sultan's protection. Victoria's peace was followed by even more good news. On the 16th, Eugenie gave birth to their son and heir, Prince Imperial Napoleon Eugene Louis Jean-Joseph Bonaparte, or just Lulu for short. The pregnancy had been difficult, and Eugenie's doctors warned she may not survive another. But in the eyes of cousin Planplan, he was the real victim, because he was no longer heir to the throne. As for the recently defeated Russians, Napoleon III managed to maintain good relations. Not only did he protect them from the worst British demands, the French emperor sent Morny as an ambassador to patch things up. Reliable as ever, he struck up a personal relationship with Tsar Alexander II, ensuring Russia would remain a friend of France. When Morny's mission was complete, he brought home a beautiful princess of the Russian royal family for a wife. And, Morny being Morny, profited immensely from the arrangement, with a 500,000 franc dowry. By 1856, Napoleon III seemed to have done the impossible. He avenged his uncle's 1812 defeat to Russia, secured his dynasty's future with the birth of Prince Imperial Lulu, brought France out of its geopolitical isolation by allying it with Europe's foremost power of England, and personally befriended the British royal family. Napoleon III might have become a universally respected figure if he hadn't also made himself a laughingstock by sleeping with every willing woman in the imperial court, excepting his own wife, who was now refusing to have him. But there's still one loose end. What was Piedmont doing in the war? Sardinia-Piedmont entered the Crimean War at the behest of its ambitious prime minister, the Comte de Cavour. He had little interest in humbling Russia, defending Ottoman sovereignty, or the fate of Christian holy sites. Rather, he bled tens of thousands of his small kingdom's best troops for no other reason than to win the attention of Europe's great powers. His plan was to use this attention to convince them to help him liberate northern Italy from Austria. A France led by former Italian revolutionary Napoleon III seemed the best candidate. But nothing Cavour tried, even arranging for his attractive cousin, the Contessa de Castiglione, to become Bonaparte's mistress, seemed to work. But it turned out that women were only Napoleon III's second greatest vulnerability. His greatest weakness was bullets. Back on April 28, 1855, an Italian revolutionary fired 2 shots at the French emperor as he rode through the streets of Paris. On April 5, 1857, 3 Italian revolutionaries jumped the emperor in his coach as he left the mansion of his Italian mistress. But the most serious attempt took place on January 14, 1858. That day, Italian revolutionary Felice Orsini and 2 of his followers threw 3 bombs at the imperial couple's carriage on their way to the opera. 8 people were killed and 100 wounded. But miraculously, the emperor and empress escaped with only superficial wounds. They continued on to the theater and led the audience in singing the Second Empire's unofficial anthem, the Pour la Syrie, a song written by Napoleon's mother Hortense. Though Napoleon escaped, another world leader was destined to suffer the fallout. As the traditional refuge for political dissidents, Orsini was just one of many political radicals, some would say terrorists, hiding in England. The French public blamed England for Orsini's attempt. Many even cried for war. Lord Palmerston, who'd become prime minister since Napoleon III inadvertently destroyed his last government, felt compelled to introduce the Conspiracy to Murder Act. The bill would make it a felony in Britain to plot a murder in another country. But the British public were proud of the asylum their nation provided to dissidents from the continent. As a result, the bill was defeated, and Palmerston's government collapsed, forcing him to resign. Despite Lord Palmerston only ever trying to help the French emperor, Louis Napoleon's antics destroyed his government for the second time. Back in France, Napoleon was befuddled that the Italians, who he had once fought for and his brother died for, were trying so hard to kill him. Yet, far from turning him against Italy, the attempted assassinations reminded the French emperor of his youthful passion for Italian liberation. As the captured Orsini's trial approached, a letter from the condemned man reached Napoleon III. Ending in the famous words, "Set my country free, and the blessings of 25 million people will follow you everywhere and forever." That Napoleon even accepted the letter, and then allowed it to be released publicly, proved he was plotting something. Something that just might finally achieve that dream of his youth, and change the map of Europe forever. And that's where we'll leave our story this week, with Napoleon III marrying a Spanish princess, befriending England's royal family, and avenging his uncle's defeat to Russia. Since you watched this far, leave a queen emoji in the comments, as a secret message to all of the other Eugenie simps who made it this far too. Tune in next week to witness the incredible heights the Second French Empire will achieve under Napoleon III. And for a presentation by Empress Eugenie of her awesome idea. Don't forget to check out this series' awesome sponsor, War Thunder, via the links in the description and pinned comment. Not only will new and returning players on PC and console get a free bonus pack, signing up with our link helps show War Thunder how awesome they are for making this series possible. You'll also find links to where you can pick up merch 10% off and become a supporter for awesome rewards. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Magna, for the awesome art. Go say hi via the links in the description. This series would be impossible without the help of our generous supporters, including our Into Space members, Archmagos Extolentia, Duke Nelson, Encore Financials, Feline Man, G Money, GS Rogers, Josiah, Lethiel Farieth, and Pater.